Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2026 Agile Austin Product and AI SIG. We're very lucky today to have Ash with us, longtime contributor to, well, the community, but I will say all the community of product and engineering and far beyond that, decades, really, and also longtime contributor to Agile Austin specifically that same time frame. Um, Ash has written books that probably many of you have heard of, such as Running Lean, Scaling Lean, Lean Canvas, all those things that so many people have just used as defaults now. And it's just amazing the impact that Ash has had. And we have him today talking about the V.I.B.E or Vibe framework for the AI era. Love the name since we love to talk about vibe coding, but Ash has made an acronym out of it. Very exciting to learn about what all of that is. We are Agile Austin. Here's our mission. It's been this way for decades now. There's a board of directors. We just had elections, so there's going to be some change. We have one of our board members here today, Ben Rogers, Chief Technology Officer. Thanks, Ben, for everything you've done. Agile Austin, everything that we do is powered by the community, but we need a little bit of money so you can get sponsorship. There's sponsorship opportunities. There's membership opportunities. Membership is $35 a year, but all our programs are free. So membership lets you vote, basically. A few other things there. Agile Austin, the Agile Austin of today has six recurring meetups: coaching, scale, book club, product and AI, leaders, and lean Kanban. So you're at the product and AI SIG on the lower left. Just a quick shout out to a couple of our sponsors: Agile Velocity. Again, 15 years probably. They're being platinum sponsor, ResumeX, and more recent, Maurya coaching. Um, if you are a member and you are interested in a professional development scholarship, we have that. We have money at Agile Austin, so we want to find ways to spend it. It's been our problem for a long time. We have all this money. How do we spend it? Because everybody here is volunteer. And then also for Agile Velocity, there's a 15% off code. If I'm going too fast and you want the stuff, just let me know in the chat. I'll forward it to you. Everybody that's here is volunteer. Just contact at agileaustin.org. Every program is started and run by volunteers. So you too can be a program lead. Speaking of program leads, you got two on the call right now, both Vishal and I. We have our year, Agile Austin '07, so next year it'll actually make 20 years that we've been here. You're at the product and AI SIG, this intersection of product, AI, Agile, all these kinds of things. And we've been doing this now for 2 years and a couple of months. So it's great to have Ash here today, continuing the message. We're looking for July speakers. So if you have an idea, I've got possibly Ross Weems, who was actually our first presenter. He expressed interest, so that might pop there. And then we're doing the ever popular lightning talks that we do in August, which is an annual event now. It'll be our third, I think. Um, so here's the pitch for today. Before I hand it off to Ash, AI made building cheap. It didn't make knowing what to build cheap. And Ash is going to talk a four-step framework for building the next generation of products that matter. Really exciting. And there you go. I'm going to stop sharing and hand off to Ash. Ash, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me go ahead and get some screens going. Do that. I think you're seeing, 1 second.
Looks good.
There. I think now you can just see the one screen.
Yep, just one screen.
Okay, perfect. All right. So thanks all for having me. As Matt said, I've kind of been around as a entrepreneur, product builder, agile lean person for a really long time. For the longest time, the message has been as we've gone through these different waves from the internet to open source, cloud computing, it's always been more about knowing what to build than actually doing the build. And of course, as we have entered this new AI era, the whole game has changed again all over. So I'm going to spend some time talking about that. I'll try to keep this interactive. So I'll have maybe 25, 30 minutes at most of just some slides and presentation, and then we'll use any remaining time that we have just for questions. I'll try to watch the chat, so if anything is zooming by, I'll pause and re respond, but otherwise we'll kind of do all that uh, when we have the next break. So let's kind of jump right into it. So as kind of Matt kind of gave in the preview there, we are living in this new AI era, and this is I can say the one idea that this whole talk is kind of built around is that AI has made building cheap, but it has not made knowing what to build cheap. And so as a result, there are new bottlenecks and constraints that we all have to deal with. There's always opportunity and crisis, and how we navigate that is always the interesting things when there's this changing of the guards kind of shifts that start to happen. You've probably seen this yourself. I've worked with a lot of teams lately where all the build velocity metrics are up. We are building a lot more stuff than ever before. But when we look at business model outcomes or engagement outcomes, user outcomes, they're either flatlining and in some cases even going down because we're just throwing a lot more stuff over the fence. So AI definitely makes building more stuff easier, but maybe not building the right things, which can in some cases even make us regress backwards. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time just breaking this out and talk really quick of the history of where we have been and how we got to where we are. I kind of said this a bit in the intro, is that if we go back a decade or so, building used to be really hard and slow and expensive, which created a natural bottleneck. And you'll kind of see a visual coming here. I often use this slide to just summarize the different methodologies that we have gone through. Some of us have lived through the waterfall era, where the old joke was, have enough resources to build two products. One, you take 1 year building the first one to learn, and then the second one to maybe attempt to get it right. And then, of course, Agile hit the scene. And if you can look at the legend here, the name of the game with Agile was iteration. So there was points in which we could stop and build and learn and build and learn and make those cycles smaller and smaller. And then Lean came along and said, let's shrink that and try to make that as continuous as we can. It was never truly continuous, but I think we're now getting to this era where there's this bottleneck of building that has totally collapsed, where continuous is probably the only option that we do have. To kind of illustrate that with the classic product lifecycle, you've all kind of known this, you've all seen this, requirements development, QA release. So if we kind of look at this this process over here, shrinking the cycle time has been the name of the game. How can we go from customer requirements to business model outcome? And the contribution that Lean kind of brought in, or I would say Lean startup to be more accurate, because there's obviously the Lean thinking Toyota stuff before that. But the contribution that Lean Startup brought up was this notion of trying to define done, not just in terms of code complete or test complete, but rather more validated learning. So when we get this in the hands of customers, can we measure something that is impactful, and can we tie that back to the work that we ship? So that's kind of the introduction there. I know all of you on the call have probably seen the build, measure, learn loops. I'm not going to go over that. But again, the basic premise here was, how do we minimize cycle time? So what has actually changed? So when we look at the product life cycle, when we look at where most of the learning happens, and first of all, I'll just maybe kind of orient to the different types of risks. We have customer risks, which are usually on that front end, and we have market risks, which are usually on once we have released a product out to market. And in the very middle there, we've got the technical risks, the feasibility risk, can we actually build it? So there's all these different types of risks, and for most products, it has been this way for a long time. For most software products, especially, technical risks have not been the riskiest aspect. We can build most things given enough time, money, and effort. The bigger question has been, will anyone care? And so for those reasons, the message used to be the slides I used to share a lot was this one, which is there's this big bottleneck in the middle. We spend lots of weeks or months building and testing code or software, but the real risks are on the tail ends. There's the requirements. We have to make sure those are right. We have to make sure they're coming from the right customer voice, customer sources, on the data from the feedback. And then there's the post-launch challenge, which is we just ship stuff. Do we know if it's actually working? How do we tie that? And so that's where there's metrics, there's all kinds of things, NPS and feedback and qualitative and quantitative metrics, all that stuff lives on that edge. So all that stuff is kind of where things were. But this was what I used to kind of tell. This was the slide that I primarily used to highlight this idea of living at the edges. Most of the de-risking needs to happen before we start building, and then once we build things to make sure we're not building wasteful features, we have to make sure we are measuring those bits because those were the bits that were often handed off, and we as product people didn't have our hands on those. A lot of that has changed, so a lot of people have done great work on both ends of the spectrum. But of course, what has changed now is the middle has completely collapsed. Now that we can I guess when we go back to kind of the Q&A, I'd love to hear stories from some of you and just how you're using AI. But with most of the teams that I'm seeing, build velocity is up. There's a lot of stuff that is being vibe coded or agentic engineered, however you want to describe it. But we're pushing a lot more PRs, and then the natural question becomes, where is now the bottleneck? So I see a lot of effort post-launch. Some folks are investing even more in making sure all the PRs that are being shipped are of the right quality. So we're automating testing, we're automating deployment, we're automating metrics. But that's still a capacity issue. The more we build, the more they were probably going to build more things than we can learn. We already drown, if you start measuring everything, we already drown in lots and lots of metrics, lots and lots of data points and information. It's just too much to process, and maybe AI will help with sorting some of that. But where I veer and what this whole V.I.B.E framework is about is actually going the opposite way. I think this is the time where we need to realize, and again, if you're a fan of theory of constraints, the idea here is that the real constraint is at the edges, but the actionable point is really at the top of the funnel, really at the pre-build stage. If we can limit, if you're familiar with drum rope buffer, if we can limit the amount of stuff we're actually building by creating some friction, but making sure we are identifying the right things to build up front, then all of a sudden we can start to tame the quality of the work that's coming out on the other end. So that's again the key message here. Now, in terms of what this means for all of us, I think many folks that I've been talking to lately have been wondering where they fit into this equation. If you write software, if you are a PM, a lot of that work is being automated. And so there's this, you can say, anxiety or fear on where do we fit in the spectrum? Is our job going to get replaced? My perspective on this is we want to actually accelerate the things that are inevitable. So when we look at what AI is really good at, it's good for work that can be templatized. It's good for work that can be repeatedly done. And there's no point trying to compete with that. If you had asked me this 6 months, 9 months ago, I come from obviously the lean canvas background, and a lot of folks ask me if I generate my lean canvas with AI, is it going to be any good? 6 months ago, I would have probably said it's not. Today, I have a different perspective. I think you can actually start generating a lot of good starting points of design, of PRDs, of specs. And then, of course, the place where we come in is going to be in the judgment and discovery side, which I'll get to. So my perspective on that is you want to lean in on the things that can be automated and try to actually speed that place up to save yourself time to do the things that cannot be that easily automated. And I'll kind of highlight 3 or 4 things that I think are things that AI is not going to be able to do for some time to come. And that's the opportunity for all of us. And this is just again showing that with every crisis comes an opportunity. Every time we get one of these shifts, there is both the fear side of things, which is what do we do, uncertainty. but at the same time, there's a lot of leverage we can gain from that if we lean into tools like this. So again, I kind of said this already, but we want to double down on the things that we do best. And so the next slide is actually going to highlight those three or four things, and then all the other areas where there is room for automation. Even these slides that you're looking at, some of you can probably guess, you may see a spelling error or two. It is all AI generated because about 6 months, maybe 9 months ago now, I decided to go all in and try to push the limits, which is what I recommend every one of you do. If you do have access to some of these tools, you want to push the limit, one, to learn, but also to understand just where are the edges, where are things that you can do to save yourself time, and then where are other places that you want to actually invest in to build your 10x leverage. So these are the four things, for me at least. Customer learning, that's something that cannot be easily outsourced just yet to anyone. And so that's one of those things that's very high in my five things that you will not be able to just outsource away to an AI. We can speed up customer learning, and that's where leverage comes in. So we have actually been building many tools of our own, which I'll maybe talk about at the very end, around this idea of customer learning. So we can take conversations with customers, we can take, interviews, we can take sales calls, we can take, marketing content. We can bring all that in and start to mine that customer support. We can start to mine that, and that's the bit that AI can help us leverage to get to signals. But at the end of the day, the actual talking to customers, the trust, the empathy, the judgment, and the taste, that still all belongs in, our category, in our bucket. So I've been carving out more time of my own to go and invest in those things and everything that I can, like building slides, which would normally take me half a day to build slides like these. And these slides are also beyond my design capability. But I'm actually investing in outsourcing that to different tools. These slides, as I said, were all generated. So the way that I kind of look at it, if you were trying to figure out where to spend your day, generally you pick a repetitive task. This could be, as I said, spec writing, unit tests, all those things that some of you are probably already doing. But look to automate those types of things to carve out time on your schedule, and then not use that free time to go and watch more Netflix, but rather use that free time to reinvest in the things that are really not so scalable. The last picture over here is something that's always been the case. I've always gone to product people and challenged them and asked them, when was the last time you actually spoke, not to a human, but to a customer? When have you actually spoken to a customer directly? And usually that's I don't usually get a very clear answer. It's not a very good answer. Usually people can't remember the last time they spoke to a customer, but those I think are where the new insights and the new opportunities for leverage are really going to come from. So let's kind of take this to the next level and we can open up and talk about questions. So I'll share with you what this V.I.B.E framework is really about. It obviously is a play, as you can all guess, on V.I.B E coding, but it's not about coding. It's really more about the front end discovery process. I thought it'd be fun to try to turn that into an acronym. And as many of you know, there's V.I.B E coding, and then there's this agentic engineering term that's been thrown around. And V.I.B E coding, from this visual, and this is from Karpathy, it actually raises the floor for everyone. So we are seeing technical folks and non-technical folks build and ship more stuff than ever before. But at the end of the day, building production level quality code still requires engineering. And so that's where the agentic engineering side comes in. So I work with a lot of technical and many non-technical founders. And so it's just important to remind the more non-technical folks that you can use V.I.B E coding for one of the steps in the V.I.B E framework, but it's not, I believe, yet to a point where you're going to build, fully one-shot or even multi-shot production level code that's just going to work for you. So let's talk about what the V.I.B E framework is. So in some ways, I'll actually maybe share this slide first. For many years, I've talked about this notion of building products, whether it's an MVP or an MVF, a minimum viable feature, or a minimum viable release, before going out and building it, just because that build step is really expensive. We want to de-risk it first. And so the traditional approach that most people take is build, demo, sell. Whether you're building a new product or a new feature, we'd go build it out first. We'd then try to demo it to a few customers and then sell it, or we get buy-in. However, it doesn't have to be an actual sale, but you get buy-in from those early customers from by usage, or in some cases, they're actually buying it. And one of the hacks that we teach in the running lean approach is shifting the order. So rather than building and then demoing and selling, we want to demo, sell, build. So we can rush to build a quick, doesn't even have to be a working prototype. It could just be a storyboard or a mock-up, and we go and try to sell that to our customers, get buy-in upfront. And if they don't get excited, then why even build it? If you can't sell the demo, why build the product? So that's the essentially the demo, sell, build approach. And this for a startup, as you can imagine, can save them months of their startup life, which is a big deal. But even in larger companies, it can help you to prioritize backlogs and do all kinds of things if you just flip to demo, sell, build versus build, demo, sell. And so when we look at the V.I.B.E framework, it is pretty much just a AI updated version of that. And it starts with the V, which stands for vet, and I'll kind of walk through what's happening in each of those stages. But the idea of vet is where we are vetting ideas in that early form to see, is this even something worth doing? We then do the interview process where we are gathering evidence from our customers potentially. These could be product managers on your team or product owners, or it could be you working with customers. And then we have a build step, and the build here is not yet building the actual product. It's actually building that stand-in, that proxy or the demo in this case. And then we run some experiments to make sure the buy-in is actually real. It's not just a polite, this is awesome kind of a buy-in, but it's an actual tangible commitment. And that's what the experiment stage is about. And so when we look at it here, just like the build, demo, sell, the build step is not the very first thing. It is actually something we do after we have vetted the idea and gathered some evidence. When we look at deliverables from each of these stages, at the end of the vet step, we should end up with some business model evidence. And this doesn't have to be, when I work with startups, we talk about the entire business model, but this could be even just one key metric. It could be an engagement metric with a feature. It could be revenue metrics. It could be, any of those types of things. But we want to be able to define what success will look like if we ship this stuff, whether it's a feature, whether it's a release, whether it's an actual product. In order to be able to get that, so the business model evidence is really more on the kind of lean canvas or business modeling side. And then when we do the interviews, we are looking for customer behavior evidence. We're trying to understand old ways and new ways of working. So a model that we use a lot is this idea of every new thing that you put out there is about causing a switch in your customers from some old way of getting the job done. So if you're familiar with jobs to be done framework, jobs don't change, only solutions do. So every time you push a new feature, there is a behavior change that you're trying to create from in your customers from doing this job one way, which was the old way, to your new way. And that's what we are trying to understand in the interviews is what is that old way? Is our new way significantly better to effect that change? And then the build is where we're looking at value delivery evidence. So can we actually build this? And this is where the demos come in. Will there be sufficient buy-in? And that's when the experiment comes in, where we are gathering that evidence. And so that's essentially the V.I.B.E framework in a nutshell. So to kind of just expand on that with a few more slides, and then we can pause and take some questions. The V here is, as I said, the vetting stage. This can be done with a lean canvas. This can be done with your backlog of feature requests. But what we're really trying to do here is prioritize opportunities. So we look at opportunities for increasing a particular metric that might be a bottleneck or a constraint we're trying to improve. And then from there, we prioritize the work and we do some of the inside the building type of vetting exercises, which is essentially your backlog pruning, but grounded in the customer voice and customer learning. And the interview stage is where we get outside and we can do a lot of learning. And so here you can see there's both the AI leverage as well as the part that maybe AI doesn't yet do so well. On the left-hand side, being able to process streams of customer voice information. So whether these are support tickets that are piling up that we, many times just declare bankruptcy on, or they are community posts, or they are reviews of your product, there's a whole, boatload of information that we just don't have bandwidth to be able to process. Well, now we can. And so there are streams of information we can start bringing in. We can start using that to prioritize the work. So AI does the breadth, and then from there, we then pick these themes that we want to work on, and we go into the customer interview conversations to do the depth work. And so that's where the interview comes in. And the right-hand side is really where I feel the areas of leverage really come in. So delegate or automate or outsource the stuff on the left-hand side, but you carve out your time to do the stuff on the right-hand side. The customer conversation, the customer interview is the fastest way to learn what customers would really care about. Uh, okay, and then from there, we then get into the build stage. And as I mentioned before, this is not building the actual feature yet. Sometimes we do need to do technical prototyping or spiking to make sure we can build what we say we're going to deliver, but we don't want to over polish here. More often than not, a storyboard or a screenshot or a mock-up is enough to share that with a customer and get meaningful signals on whether we are on the right track. And this is where if I'm talking to non-technical folks, this is really where vibe coding really shines, is we can now go and build really interesting, clickable prototypes that look very real and actually are very close to what is actually buildable. But we don't want to go and necessarily build that production level version just yet. And then the commitment bit. And this is also where I see a lot of people cop out, is we don't take the time. We may build a demo, we may show it to a handful of people, we may get the verbal pat on the back, this is awesome. If you build it, we'll use it, but we've got to take it a step further. And this is really where the rubber hits the road, is getting real tangible commitments. And there are many tactical ways of doing this. When I work with startups, it is really ideally trying to get down to purchase orders or letters of intent and actual money transacted. But there are, again, softer ways and more tactical ways for doing this if you were working in a larger company with a feature or release that you were getting out there. But we still want to measure enough signal that if we build this, there will be engagement on the other end, and that's what the experiment stage is about. Okay, so I think this is again just kind of a last slide of just showing kind of where V.I.B.E fits in the picture. So we have gone through these different ways of working. V.I.B.E is nothing more than an acronym to just modernize AI leverage plus some of this lean kind of thinking. So the demo cell build concept. The bit that I shared before, kind of lean, trying to move in this continuous mode, was a half truth. And for the reasons I highlighted before, is that building was never as fast as it could be. So even if you did all the discovery work that I'm talking about, we always got bottlenecked with building the actual feature and then getting it out to market. In fact, one of the top questions or objections I used to get is if I go and sell my demo, but my demo is going to take 6 months to then actually build or 3 months to build, won't I lose that customer? And in some instances, that was a very true concern. Well, now that cycle time is even shortened, which is a great opportunity for all of us because now we can actually really do this in a near continuous fashion. The discovery and validation can really blend together really nicely. So I'll kind of maybe pause over here and then maybe we'll come back to this a little bit later. Um, Maybe we can go to some questions and then we can come back and talk about anything else on your mind. Let me.
I just changed the settings so participants can now unmute themselves.
Okay, good.
Well, I have a comment if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that we've always assumed to be true that I found not to be true is that the customer knows what they want. And if you just spend enough time with them, they'll tell you. When
Yeah,
actually they don't know what they want. But if you
yeah.
give them something, they can say, "This is what I hate about it." Right? And this new process allows you to do that really rapidly. So instead of being a sequence of phases, it's one phase, right? But this, I don't like this. Okay, how about this? How about this? No, no, that's all right. How about this? Right? You can go through that quickly. And I think the interview the customer part kind of goes away, and there's some way we need to more deeply test the effectiveness, the market, the something.
Yeah, so maybe I'll comment on that. I just want to make sure that yeah, you're still seeing the right screen. Okay. So Steve Jobs said that very famously, it is not the customer's job to know what they want. And I also find that when people get into interviews, they often construe that as let's ask the customer what they want and let's build that. And that's not what I'm advocating for. So the way that we are running these interviews, and if I kind of go more detailed on that, what we are really trying to understand is in that discovery conversation, we are not even pitching or bringing our solution into the mix. We want to really understand a job. So tell me, so if I'm trying to build, let's just say AI for legal, for what the work paralegals would do, what I would do in those interviews is try to go and understand when there is a case. So there's a situation, there's a case that some lawyer is trying to some attorney is trying to run and they're using paralegals. They're hiring paralegals to do a certain job. What are they really doing? So that's really the purpose of the interview is we are trying to understand what are people trying to get done and where and what does that look like and where are they struggling? Where are their workarounds? Where are their pet peeves? Where are their points of friction? So really this idea of interviewing is not tell me what to build, but it's really telling me how are you currently doing this job with the existing alternative?
Is
Now
that
it's our
distinct
job.
from is that distinct from workflow mapping? Or is that the same thing?
It can be. So it can be workflow mapping. And one of the dangers with workflow mapping sometimes is we get too stuck in the solution context. And
Hmm.
here I like to use the drill bit example. And if I were a drill bit manufacturer and I wanted to optimize drilling holes in the wall, I could build stronger drill bits, I could build better drill bits, but then 3M comes along with the command strip and then eliminates the drill bit entirely if you want to hang a painting. And so that's where, when we are just focused on the workflow, we sometimes optimize steps that should be taken out entirely, like drilling a hole in a wall to hang a painting. And so we want to
Good.
think bigger context. So this is where it is workflow mapping, but with a desired outcome in mind. So when I'm looking at a workflow, I want to ask, like for that attorney, like what does winning the case really mean? The work the paralegals are doing, they're going through all these different steps. But if I could eliminate those steps and give you that same case insight to win the case, would that be interesting to you? So we want to kind of jump to the desired outcome. But hopefully that made the point is that in the interviews, we're really trying to understand how the job is done and where the problems are. And then we put on our, you know, product hat and say, what can we as product people build? What solution can we build that either gets the job done better, gets a desired outcome faster, or removes friction, like removes steps along the way, and then that's what we go build. Right? What else? What else is on your mind?
Well, one of the things that occurs to me and has always been a challenge is I mentioned this earlier, like I'm mostly on the engineering side, but sometimes on the product, but we're all building products, so I guess I'm always both. Um, there's building the thing right and there's building the right thing. And I agree with you, Ash, like my entire professional career, it's like it's been about delivery. And it's like cool. Like we've been able to deliver these massively impossible, you can't do it, but we did do it, and all sorts of great history and delivering great things or delivering to spec to scope to all those kinds of things. But then if nobody uses it, like so what? And I think that most builders are heavily, if not primarily, motivated by people getting value out of what they put all their time and effort in building. And so the question that I try to ask this for any of the features, capabilities that we're building is, what problem are we trying to solve and how do we know when we solved it? What specific metrics, what specific evidence? And starting that at the beginning, which is what you're talking about here. Um, that's comment number one. Comment number two, before I hand it over, is you had talked about moving away from the 40-page PRDs. What what's been interesting in my team's use of agentic AI. I've got like pretty large software building team, and we have the lots of modern tools, and we're in for whatever definition of agentic AI, like we're starting to experiment with that. We
Yep.
find that we need more of the PRDs and like architectural review documents. Actually, we need a lot written down. And what's different than sort of the maybe the bad old days of the, market requirement document, product requirement, all the RDs, all those kinds of things. There were documents that sort of were written, and that seemed to be the main purpose of the exercise was writing the document. But if you're now building a machine that builds a machine, having all of that context, I'm starting to like
Yep.
I'm going back to like, well, I want PRDs. I used to say PRDs are ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? Nobody's gonna look at it. But if you have a machine that only sort of knows context from the written word, then they start becoming useful again. So I'll
Yes.
throw it out there.
Yes, and so I maybe I'll add to that, and I would say that I'm maybe not saying that we don't write PRDs, but I'm wondering like if you handwrite those PRDs, or if you are generating them and then becoming reviewers of the PRDs, and
Yeah.
I think it's maybe more the latter, and I think
Yep.
it's very important to get the context, and that's again where people who like vibe code their way to a very complex product don't even understand how it works, and even sometimes the AI will, and we all have been there, where it will re-implement a function like 5 times. It will write code like 10 different ways, and so it too needs that discipline, and I find that that is absolutely critical. And that's also where I'll just maybe talk a little bit about this product that about 6, 9 months ago we decided to start a side project called Lean Spark, and we wanted to see, it was essentially answering that question, is how can we create context that will allow us to build better products. So some of the sources I was talking about, customer support or interviews or even design documents, and in our case with startups, even strategy documents, they're very important artifacts to create. And if we are AI generating them, that's great. One, we now become editors and we review them. But then what do we do with them? We want to actually employ our agentic partners to be able to leverage them in the best way possible. So I find that that context library is actually more important than ever. And if we can bring that in, so like one of the examples that I share, and I ran a workshop on this a few weeks ago, is even landing pages or marketing copy. If we could build landing pages based on the last 10 customer interviews that we have done or on customer support requests, and we could bring the voice of the customer on that landing page, use their words, use their testimonials, wouldn't that be better? And we can now automate that and do all of that. So that's all very cool and very interesting stuff.
I think Alex was next.
Yeah, I'd seen a hand raised. Go ahead.
And Sindhu.
Hi, I just want to say thank you so much for this real quick. Um, as a emerging entrepreneur in the testing and validation stage of my career, I'm trying to adopt your framework of thinking, right? What are some processes or what are my ways to think? How do I be able to essentially think like you when I'm testing this, right? When I'm using AI? What are some tips?
I think the most important thing, and I was going to say with my t-shirt, but today I switched t-shirts, but it's to love the problem, not your solution. So, and that's almost to me like a first principle. So whenever I'm starting, and so I love product, and I've actually probably shipped more code than I have in the last 6 months than the last 5 years. And I catch myself always trying to take shortcuts, just like anyone else, saying, "Oh, I know this is actually the right thing to go and build, the right thing to go do." But you have got to catch yourself, and it's just like first principles in science. You want to ask yourself the question that Matt was asking, which is, what evidence do we have that this is a problem worth solving? And there also, we sometimes have evidence of problems, but because maybe one customer or 5 customers asked for this feature. But the question there again is that enough? Like, is it 5 people, and what if those folks didn't know what they really wanted? Is that enough evidence? And the answer usually is no. And so if I have in that scenario where 5 customers said they want something, rather than me just building it, I would want to get them on a call and say, tell me why you want this, and almost like go through that interview process to see what are they trying to do. And whenever I've done that, many times we have come back and build something else entirely because what they thought they wanted was maybe not the right thing. So that would be the most important, I think, skill to build in, which is almost put the brakes on. We product folks always we're good at building things, but going to like what we have already said, we want to build the right thing. And so put a few brakes to decelerate, and that's actually going to serve you in the long run. The customer will still be there. I know everyone feels like we're in this sprint now. We have to just run at 100 miles an hour. The laptop has to be open, the agent has to be spinning. But I think that it's some of that is just overblown. Like we don't have to be that that crazy. We want to slow things down and build it right.
Ash, there's a question in the chat about hardware. How does it fit within
Sure.
hardware? Nobody's talked.
Okay, let me see if I can find that. Maybe can you read that out? Let me.
Hey, hey, Ash, this is Vishal. The reason I put that is, I deal with a lot of companies that use that build essentially physical hardware. And the question I had was obviously, some of the initial stuff you talked about, 3D specs and all, you can kind of show that, get some feedback. But generally, I think, AI hasn't really gotten to a point where you can build really fast or as fast with software, like you said things can move really quickly. So that has collapsed.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you have, especially because I know you know a lot of lean stuff as well. Any thoughts on how or where there might be some benefits, from
Sure.
this particular model?
Yeah. So first, I don't know if Matt has anything to add to that, but isn't Jeff Bezos building the AI equivalent of hardware? I think he's doing a lot of stuff now. He's got this new company where they're trying to use robotics to speed up hardware development. So I think that's going to come next if some of that is not already possible, where we'll be able to build just build things a lot faster, even using AI as
Mm.
leverage. And his is like it's a combination of robotics, but I think it's also just like specs and things like doing design engineering specs with AI. Like he's investing in that direction. So I think that will come. But to answer the question, just in the now, always like the biggest risk with any product for me is the should we build it question. And some of that work, that de-risking work, even with hardware, it becomes very expensive if we just build first, even more so than with software, because software has got the people costs, but we don't have the hard costs necessarily associated with it. So for all those reasons, I would say that the upfront demand validation is even more important with hardware to make sure there will be a customer. And with hardware, we can often even take things like pre-orders. The big example I like to share is just even if you look at cars, Tesla with their Roadsters and some of the other cars that they built, they don't go into mass production. Even Apple, when they do an iPhone launch, they're not starting to spin out, millions of these things based on demand. They actually start collecting that information. They'll first do in their case, they'll do a live demo. In the case of Tesla, they did lots of promotions. They collected pre-orders. They use that to gauge demand, and then from there they go off to build the hardware. So I don't know if the question was more on the actual build side. On the build side, I think there are tools that are probably going to be coming down the line that will speed things up,
Right.
and some may already be there in various forms. But on the demand side, there's always still this risk of we'll go off and even build a small batch of things and we'll sell zero of them, or we'll sell only one or two of them, one or two units. And so we
Right.
want to de-risk.
I think what was interesting was I think you mentioned that even within the lead canvas now, let's focus on what if you focused on the most important things first, kind of validate those things. And so you're essentially building out your sort of the requirements or the specs by going through that iterative model, letting AI funnel a lot of input, and then from that, kind of figure out where to dive deeper. So that whole front end changes in a way where you're kind of doing a lot more diligence to prioritize the right things first. Is that the right takeaway?
Yeah, yeah. And I would just go back to the sell before you build. If I were building, I mean, I would say that for any product, whether it was software, hardware, or even a service, is even when I try to design a workshop, which is probably in many ways the easiest of all of the three product categories to go, build because you're just putting together a bunch of slides and going and delivering a workshop. But even there, selling before you build is always the thing that I lean for to begin with. Is why waste a single minute trying to build something that there is no market for, there's no one has raised their hand for.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey Maurya, Sindhu here.
Hello.
Thanks for the opportunity. Today I came to know a new technology beyond Agile and Lean process in the projects, which is a V.I.B.E framework. So I'm a UX designer. I build products based on a user-centric approach, human-centric mostly. So I have a question today for you on which part of this V.I.B.E framework benefits most from AI, and which part should we remain primarily for human driven? What is your opinion?
Yeah. So this is where I would say there's in every one of these steps, there is a place to use AI leverage for the things that we can automate and scale. And then there's a part where our judgment and our taste and our empathy comes in. So if we walk through them, so obviously in the vetting step, this is where we are trying to, go through like let's say customer feedback, and there's tons of it. So we can use AI to quickly find signals in the noise. When we are doing, business modeling, there's metrics, there's, revenue goals. We can use these AI tools to speed up that process to ensure that we are focused on the right kinds of goals. So that's what I would use the AI for. And then the judgment comes in, looking at those results and doing that, let's just say the vibe check on whether on whether that analysis is correct. On the interview steps, there's tons of areas. So we do a lot of customer interviews. I teach different techniques for doing customer interviews. People struggle with prospecting, like how do we get people on a call? There's tons of tools we can leverage with AI to get messages out, the emails that you might send your customers to get them to talk to you. We're not all great copywriters, but the nice thing is AI has been trained in copywriting, so we can speed that up. When you're actually delivering a conversation or the interview, AI can help you prep for it. So it can create a templatized, you can say starting script for how you run the demo or the pitch or the interview. So we leverage it for that. We like to record all our interviews because in the interviews, as much, as you might be good at note taking, there's always going to be things that you miss. So we can use AI for leveraging that. And so when you describe the human-centric, design aspect of yours, if you do engage in customer interviews, trying to mine them for insights can be sped up significantly if you point a well-prompted or an agentic product that has been well prompted to look for those insights for you. You can speed that up rather quickly. I already talked about on the build step, there's all the vibe coding, building of demos, clickable prototypes becomes a lot easier. And on the experiment step, it will be more along the lines of, say, interview and vet. We can use it for analyzing the conversations we have with customers and reading their objections or getting coached on how to deal with certain objections and how to process the qualitative learning that we are getting and looking for signals in that. So
I
so,
got
so the
it.
short answer, I think, is you can, in every one of these steps, my fork in the road is this something that I can speed up with AI? If I can, then I try to do that. And for the places where my human, judgment, taste, empathy is still required, that's where I'd want to over index on that skill.
So
Right.
overall, at which phase we can say, like after the experiment phase, can we say like our product is ready for delivery or is ready for the release?
So in this framework, after the experiment phase, what we get is maybe the beginnings of a validated product spec that we can now go and start to build. So whether that's, like I said, a feature or a release, but you have now gotten what's different here is we are not building something and hoping that people will use it. After
Mhm.
you've gone through the Vibe framework, you know that there is a problem worth solving. You know that customers have given you a tangible commitment. And so now it's really the delivery challenge. Can you actually go deliver this thing that you have demoed to them? And I would argue that that de-risks a lot of the, it basically de-risks a lot of the product risk in the process.
I agree with you. So the stakeholder will have an option whether they can make a decision after going through all this why process, right?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
So,
Maurya.
Hey Ash, thank you for a great presentation. There's a couple gaps, I guess, that exist for me, and from my own experience, recognizing that the direction being set by leadership needs to be more active. And I think that's one of the challenges that we're seeing in this era, right? That AI is amplifying the capabilities that are currently existing in our ecosystem. And part of that, I think, is a lack of direction from leadership, right? The second thing I want to add to that is there's a coherence gap that's existing between the things we value and what we measure. So, for example, we value the outputs, but we're not measuring the outcomes, which will help us realize the value that's necessary in this process. And I think my question for you is how do we close that gap, right? Because yeah, like like we're seeing this play over and over and over and over and over again, and there's a capabilities gap that's existing where product direction seems to be missing. And I think, in my perspective, that it's a leadership direction capability in helping us solve for that. So
yeah.
everything else flows better through the system, whereby we're not speeding up the wrong priorities.
Yeah, and that gets to the, every process works in theory till you add people, and when you add orgs and departments and all those things get complex, which is why, at least for me personally, I don't work in a large company for many of those reasons, is I want to be able to build products the way I do, and make my own mistakes and be accountable for them 100%. And so I think it comes down to so you talked about capabilities. I kind of use a different C word, which is culture. And so there are certain cultures that when like they and this has always been the case. Look at any product development methodology, whether it was agile, whether it was lean startup, whether it's now AI and how we're using it, you're going to see that culture gap where there are going to be some that get it and it's all everything you described. It needs to be outcomes, not outputs. It needs to be leveraging AI with or whatever technology with the right signals. And to me, it's like traction or customer or business model impact. That's the world I live in. And if we are looking at those other proxies like build velocity or number of PR shipped or number of bugs closed, or now we're talking about how many tokens, token maxing tokens are being spent. Those are all the wrong proxies. It's like going back to counting lines of code, which we used to do at one point, and now we laugh at it. And that's weird. So that never changes. It just keeps repeating. So I don't have a very good solution there. It is, as you said, leadership. It is, as you said, culture. Um, at the other end, I've been seeing a lot of latent founders more recently where domain experts who have been in large companies have often felt like they have to, they want to have impact and they've got the domain expertise and they're building products in this company. I'm starting to see in our world, we deal with a lot of founders. We're starting to see a lot of domain experts defecting these larger organizations to go and do something of their own, right? So I think you're going to see some of that happening as well. The companies of one or two people building products because now you can. You're going to see some of that happening as well. I'm not advocating that you go quit your job, but I'm just saying that you're going to see a lot of that happening as well. And then some of the companies will get it. Some of the companies are using AI, big companies in the right way.
Thanks for sharing that thought. I think it's something that I'm wrestling with currently, right? Like, how do we get leadership more active in the redesign of the system? And how do we measure, these organizational capabilities that help,
Mhm.
develop trust, right? Or build the right culture that helps us go through a very quick feedback loop, and really honing on the right output. So thanks for sharing your thoughts and perspective on that. And the last thing I want to say is, how do we connect with you on LinkedIn, Ash, if we're looking to do so?
Just so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Just send me a connect request. I'm happy to accept all your connects.
Ash, there's about just a few minutes left. Is there a summarization that you'd like to do or have any final thoughts, content to share with the group here?
I think we've covered most of the
Okay.
key message. So I'm good there, but I would just always come back to that first principle. Someone asked that question already, which is where I normally would end things. Is I often draw this analogy of keys and doors is problems and solutions. When many of us product people rush to build solutions too quickly, it's like building a key. It's a solution looking for a problem, and that's a very hard problem or challenge to overcome. When we flip that around and can instead start with some of the vetting process up front, and we know the door we want to go through, then that's where the key building becomes both fun but also easier, in my opinion, because we know exactly the parameters of what we're trying to the gateway we're trying to open there. Um, so that is a slight mindset shift. And as I said, used to be a product person. I built many products that were awesome to me that didn't turn out to be awesome for others. And I think we've all been there. And it was just this kind of reflection back to say, if we just change mindset and slow things down and try to flip it around, we can actually start building things that do ultimately matter at the end of the day.
Ash, it's super interesting because I hadn't thought about that. It's like we actually many of us have been talking about, slow down to go fast, right? For many years, like this has been a common thing that people talk about. And it's almost like now we can. I don't want to, I mean, we could before, right? Like back to Gwen, if that's, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but like we could change the culture of the company to sort of focus and do the right thing, build more of the right thing as opposed to just building a lot of stuff. But the question, that occurs to me after just thinking about what you said is like we actually have the opportunity to slow down now because the actual building and construction is getting faster. I mean, those of us who are in engineering, like I've seen real results, vetted experiments with like not perfect. We're not replacing, everybody with AI or anything like that, but people with these tools can actually go a lot faster and do a lot more. So now we can slow down a bit and make sure that we're building the right thing and the building the thing right kind of comes just as, we almost get it for free now. So
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
perspective map, but I want to share like some additional context in
yeah,
all of
please.
this. So the speed race, right, and the inability to connect investment to ROI is forcing us to not slow down, right?
Mm,
Because senior executives are looking to map like what are the outcomes we're achieving from that significant investment we're making. And so I love the idea of slowing down, but the pressure for catching up to, hey, what's the ROI on what we're doing is really
right.
putting us in a bind, right? Trying to decipher for, hey, we need to go fast, but are we building the right things? And then also like, hey, what are we measuring? Are we seeing the outcome? So I love that we need to slow down, but there's a coherence
Yeah, but
disconnect that's happening. Mhm.
right, but I think the point here is that I mean Slack has always been important to build into any process, and sometimes we have to deliberately make that Slack. Because I even on that point, I would say like when I work with Claude these days, I've got four terminals going because I can run them, and so it never sleeps till I run out of money, and I can just put more money into the machine. And so it never sleeps, and so I have this tendency of wanting to work 24/7, but you almost have to stop and say, this is my thinking time. I'm just going to, away from the keyboard and start to think strategy, start to think, what is it that's the right thing to do? So,
Hey, Alex, could you bring us home with a final question? Because it's after two, so,
sure.
or sorry, probably four there. Two
No
around.
problem, I got you. I was just gonna say, what are some resources, some books, some articles I can reach just to, really help myself, educate myself on not only AI, but, product validation, right? To ingrain that, okay, this doesn't work, but this does.
Yeah, maybe Matt. I mean, I'll probably like point you to some of the lean books because the principles haven't changed all that much. But if anyone else wants to chime in, feel free. And I think on the AI stuff, there's just most of it is not yet in books. I find you just have to do and learn. Like there's no one has had enough time to actually write a book because it's just changing so quickly.
Yeah.
You could, I mean, one of the things that's nice, there's the so-called one shot. I mean, I've been a longtime user of these tools, and it's almost like, you used to think about the prompt engineering, they guided you, and now it's just I just put a bunch of blather in it. Like, tell me something. I'm an engineering VP. Tell me something about the latest in AI tools or something. And it actually produces like
Yeah.
Claude and Perplexity actually produce like stunning, like especially if they sort of like you have a relationship with it, like stunningly good places to start. And I used to really have all these stickies and like, this is how you prompt and this is how you do it. And there's a lot of stuff there. And then you can ask it for really good books. I think probably all the people
Yeah.
here have like,
And
probably have a
and
libraries.
I'll actually just second that. I mean, the way that I got up to speed with it was going into the output modes, especially in Claude, they have the explanation mode, and you can take any system you're trying to learn, and the Claude leaked their own code, but you can go in and just say, how do you work? Like, tell me how this works, and it's just the best way to like learn architecture and code and systems of anything out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just tell them who you are. Like, I think that's the kind of thing. It's like, oh, I'm a VP of engineering that's trying to enable my team and actually make real results out of this and not a bunch of bullshit. What's a good plan? I won't say that that's exactly what I said, but it wasn't really that far off. And then you can refine it kind of deal, but it really is quite amazing. And then like with whether you're getting that kind of mode that Ash was talking about in Claude, but also in Perplexity. I like Perplexity just because it gives you all of its references, and then you can go by default. They maybe all of them do now, but that was Perplexity's claim to fame. It was like you could go check it, and then you could ask it for book recommendations. I'm trying to learn. I'm new. I'm trying to get into user experience, like Sindhu, or I'm trying to do these kinds of things. Tell them who you are and what you're wanting to do, and then it's pretty darn good. But all right. Any final thoughts, Ash, or what? Give you the final word?
I would just thank you all for taking time on a Friday afternoon. It's been great. I've been doing, and so this is again one of those things I find that the more we are kind of cooped up in front of computers, we need to take time to have these kinds of conversations and real conversations about what we're all thinking and doing. We're all figuring it out. So I definitely appreciate Matt you inviting me to this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I know there's so many people here that we know, longtime Agile Austin folks that are not asking questions. So like it's cool. I know they know you, and probably know them too. So it's great to I think this will go down as the product in AI SIG that has the absolute most question content and most interactive content we've done since we started. So Ash, for that, thank you, because it really is about the conversation and the community that we build together here in that time that we're all taking. So really appreciate you, and really appreciate everybody who's here today at the SIG, and love to have you continue coming, joining. And if you have something to say, please reach out. Let me know. Matt.roberts@agileawesome.org, and we'll figure out how to get you on. With that, hope you all have a very lovely weekend, and hope to see you all in July.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Um,
Stop.
Matt, I just have
Yeah.
a question for you.